So when I watch Boogie Nights, I actually get pretty sad because most of it was filmed here in the San Fernando Valley, but a lot of it was filmed right here in Reseda, just about a mile or so from where I lived at the time. So when I watch the movie, I see a lot of stores that I remember from when I was a kid that no longer exist anymore. So it's pretty bittersweet, but either way, today we're gonna be checking out filming locations for Boogie Nights. Some of the locations are still here, some are gone, so let's go see what we can find. The movie, of course, starts by showing the title of the movie right up here on the marquee of the old Reseda movie theater. It then does that weird thing where the camera goes up and spins, and yeah, I'm not really into it, but that's just me. It shows the Reseda movie theater sign, and then the camera pans across Sherman Way, showing all of these businesses over here, a lot of which still look the same. Now when it gets over to this corner, this is probably where I get the most sad because it very briefly shows the sign of the old Sherman Square roller rink. And that would have been right here on the corner where Walgreens now is. And if you grew up in this area, you know the Sherman Square roller rink sign was very iconic. It's just a sign that I remember passing by my entire life. So for it to be gone for so many years and then all of a sudden see it again in a movie, it just brings back a lot of emotions. Also on top of that, they very briefly show the old Cragen Auto Parts store, which I used to go into all the time with my dad. It's now a thrift store. The camera then continues to pan around and we see Hot Tracks Disco, which was right here on the corner. At the time, it was the Reseda Country Club. It's now a Spanish church. But this is it right here. This was Hot Tracks. This was the disco where Jack hangs out and Roller Girl hangs out. Pretty much everybody hung out at this disco, and this is where Jack first discovers Eddie. Unfortunately, no one was holding the doors open for me like they were for Jack, but they did film the interiors of Hot Tracks inside the country club. But since it's now a church, it no longer looks like it did in the movie. But yeah, right here, these are the doors that they walk through. And then right over here, this is where the box office window would have been. I'm really sad to see that they got rid of that. I mean, obviously, of course, they wouldn't need it anymore, but still just sad to see it gone. This is where Eddie's walking after he gets off work, and then the car comes around the corner and Jack, Amber, and Roller Girl pick him up. So after they pick up Eddie, they bring him to Dirks Restaurant to sit down and work out the details of his new career. Unfortunately, a few years back, Dirks was turned into Sephora makeup store. Dirks was a San Fernando Valley institution and quite a few movies were filmed there, and it's definitely a huge bummer to see it gone. This right here, this was Eddie's house. Before he became Dirk Diggler, this is where Eddie lived with his mom and dad.
You from around here? I mean, Canoga, Reseda?
No, you know where Torrance is?
Now, we see the interiors of this house multiple times in the movie, but we only see the exteriors very briefly. This house behind me was used as the home of Jack Horner, and it's one of the few locations that's outside of the San Fernando Valley and not really near any of the other locations. Now, the bad news is the house is kind of set back and a little bit sunken, so there's not a lot of the front of the house that you can see from the street. The good news is there's a lot of MLS pictures that you can find online from the last time the house was for sale. And from looking at those MLS pictures, we can definitely tell that they filmed inside the house. Right over there, that's the driveway that leads down to the garages that are on the side of the house. That's where Little Bill comes out and finds his wife with another man. He then walks up the driveway and he's standing somewhere right about here talking to Kurt about the movie that they're going to be filming the next day. Now, along with filming inside the house, they also shot quite a few scenes in the backyard because this is where the pool party takes place, and just quite a few scenes take place there in the backyard in that pool. Now, the backyard is somewhat exposed, and without getting too close to the house, we can see that the pool is still there and the backyard still looks pretty much just like it did at the time of filming. Right here is the pool. Right over here would have been the bar. Back there would have been that hot tub. And you can see right over here, this is where Jack first introduces Eddie to Buck. And we can even see right here, this is the very spot where Jack and Dirk have their big fight. That happened right here on the side of the pool. And then right here on the side of the house, this is where they come walking from the backyard on New Year's Eve, and Scotty's got his new car parked over here that he wants to show to Dirk. That all happens right here on the side of the house. This is where Dirk goes shopping when he buys the new shirt. I believe they used the building on the left side, and we don't see the outside of the store, but the way I was able to figure it out was by the businesses across the street. You get a shot of these businesses out the window when they're trying on the shirt, and if you notice, this building on the left side, in the movie it was a dentist's office, and it's still a dentist to this day. There's a quick scene where we see a couple of people running to the Pussycat Theater to see Dirk's new movie. We see them run right past this brick wall before the camera pans up and shows the marquee of the Pussycat. Now that was filmed at the Santa Monica location, which closed down in the late 90s. It was then gutted and turned into a restaurant, and it's been at least a few different restaurants since then. So this is Dirk Diggler's house. Once he starts making a little bit of money from his movies, he gets himself a nice place to live that includes a dojo-style bedroom.
It's my dojo.
In the scene where he's showing Amber his new car in the garage, you can actually see this brick wall right here. This is Sound City Studios, a legendary recording studio with a lot of history. Everybody from Elton John to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and from Fear to Nirvana have recorded here. But in March 1983, this is where Dirk Diggler came to record You've Got the Touch.
You got the touch. You got the power.
Of course, in the end, he wasn't able to pick up those demos because he spent all of his money on drugs. But right here at Sound City, this is where he recorded. Down this path is where Dirk gets picked up by the guy in the truck. Right here on the left side would have been a restaurant, and that's where Dirk's hanging out. I remember it being Biff's restaurant, but I think it was a couple of different places before eventually being torn down, and the property's now being used as a homeless tent camp. Luckily, that church across the street that's extremely recognizable is still there and still looks the same, along with this metal railing that once stood between the bank and the restaurant. The area where Dirk and the guy in the truck stop and park is now fenced off and not really accessible anymore. So at the same time that Dirk's in that parking lot, Jack and Roller Girl are in the back of the limo. He says that they're driving down Sherman Way, and from the looks of this screenshot, that's definitely true. Notice the McDonald's on the left side and the Carl's Jr. on the right side. This is on Sherman Way, about 1 block east of Wilbur. The limo pulls over and stops right here in front of what's now a science academy. At the time it was the Jasmine Bazaar, an indoor swap meet. But so the limo would have been stopped right about here, and they let the guy out. And then that's when he makes the comment about Jack's films, and that's when Jack blows up and gets out and starts beating the guy. Right here is exactly the spot where they kick him out of the limo. Notice this palm tree and this lamppost, and those 3 palm trees in the background, all of which can be seen in that shot. So right here, this was the exact spot where the guy's on the ground and Jack's on top of him, beating him up. before Roller Girl eventually joins in and they have to pull her off. After badly beating up Dirk, the trucks come pulling out of this driveway, and we see this supermarket across the street, which was Vaughn's at the time. The camera then pans across the parking lot. Right here would have been Rent-A-Center, and then the 99-cent store is still here. And then the camera pans over here and we see Miss Donuts, and we see a sign for Save on Drugs, which of course is no longer there, but Miss Donuts is still here. It was here inside Miss Donuts where Buck goes in to grab a dozen, including some Christmas donuts.
Did you do this for the Christmas?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cute.
And he ends up witnessing a robbery gone wrong, and that's where he gets the money to open his stereo shop. The Royale Motel is the spot where they get together to work out the plans for their drug deal scam. It would have been in that room straight ahead, but supposedly it was just used for establishing shots. They didn't actually film inside the motel room. It's since been upgraded to the El Royale Hotel, but still pretty much looks like the same place that we see in the movie. This house right here, this was where they go to do the drug deal. I'm sure you remember, with the firecrackers and the baseball and all the craziness, but unfortunately, the house that we see in the movie doesn't really exist anymore. Not sure if this house was torn down and completely rebuilt or just heavily remodeled, but it no longer resembles the house that we see in the movie. But Dirk's Corvette would have pulled up and parked right across the street, and then the three of them nervously walk up those front steps. And after the deal goes bad, they come running outside and they try and jump into Dirk's car, which again is parked right across the street, but the car begins rolling down the hill, and Reed actually runs towards this house right over here on the corner, which this house still looks exactly the same. As Dirk's car rolls down the hill, he finally catches up with it and jumps inside and drives off that way down the hill. After Buck takes the money from Miss Donuts, he's finally able to open his own stereo shop. And right here, this was the location of Buck's super cool stereo store. And it's the same stereo shop that we see earlier in the movie. And of course, things here look a bit different now. They removed the storefront, got rid of all those windows and the door and the planter right there in the middle. Things are pretty unrecognizable, but this is the spot. Once the camera turns around, we see that it's actually Amber, Kurt, and Scotty that are shooting Buck's TV commercial. And you can see this house in the background behind them. Pay attention to that air conditioning unit on the roof. At the end of the movie, we see that Roller Girl is now back in school, and that scene was filmed at Reseda High School. So was the scene earlier in the movie when we see her running out of class. So this restaurant used to be a gentleman's club called Showgirls, and then after that it turned into a coffee house / music venue called the Coffee Machine. Now I don't know for sure, but I believe that this is where Reed performs his magic show at the end of the movie. Now it's impossible to match things up now because the inside of this building has been gutted and looks nothing like it used to, but I did perform here once when it was the Coffee Machine, and I remember it looking really similar to how it did in Boogie Nights. Well, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. I am a star. I'm a big, bright, shining star.